August 6, 1945. The sun had barely risen over Hiroshima when Tsutomu Yamaguchi stepped off the tram. He was 29 years old, an engineer for Mitsubishi, assigned to a temporary project in the city. It was supposed to be his last day before returning home to Nagasaki. He carried his briefcase, some sketches, and a letter for his wife. But by 8:15 a.m., everything that defined normal was erased from existence. A blinding flash split the morning sky, white, silent, divine in its terror. For a single second, the city became brighter than the sun. Yamaguchi felt the air ignite around him. He threw himself into a ditch, as a wave of heat tore through the streets. Glass vaporized. Shadows burned into walls. Flesh melted where light touched it. When he opened his eyes again, the world was on fire. His eardrums had ruptured. His body was covered in burns. But he was alive. Somehow. He staggered toward the ruins, watching a city dissolve into ash. People wandered the streets with skin hanging from their arms, their eyes clouded white, their voices whispering for water. The Ota River boiled. Wooden houses collapsed into smoldering skeletons. He found shelter in a collapsed air raid trench. Hours passed like seconds. By nightfall, Hiroshima no longer existed, only a circle of fire stretching for miles. Yamaguchi's mind refused to believe it. He was an engineer, a man of logic, of plans and machines. But what he saw defied reason. The next morning, he joined the wounded walking out of the city. His hair was burned off, his face unrecognizable. Every step hurt. The train lines, miraculously still functional, were being used to evacuate survivors. He boarded one heading west, toward Nagasaki, his home, his wife, his child. He thought he was leaving the nightmare behind. When he arrived 2 days later, his wife wept when she saw him. His skin had turned black and cracked. He told her what he'd seen, the blinding light, the city that vanished, the endless screams. She dressed his wounds with oil and bandages. Slowly, the color began to return to his face. On August 9th, Yamaguchi insisted on reporting to work. His boss didn't believe his story. "One bomb can't destroy a whole city," the man said. Yamaguchi began to explain what happened. The flash, the heat, the wind. And then, another flash. A white light filled the room, brighter than the sun. The windows exploded inward, and the building shook as if the earth itself screamed. He fell to the floor as glass and debris rained down. The office went silent except for the roar of fire. It was Nagasaki. His home. His wife. His son. The same force that had destroyed Hiroshima had followed him here. He was at the center of a second inferno. Outside, the city burned again. The hills around Nagasaki trapped the blast, focusing its rage. Fires merged into one monstrous column of flame. People fled into rivers that hissed from the heat. The sky turned black with smoke. Yamaguchi crawled out of the wreckage, his bandages burning away. He looked up, trembling, as a mushroom cloud rose over the valley. The world had ended, again. And this time, he wasn't sure he'd make it home. For 2 days, Nagasaki was a living nightmare. The air was thick with dust, ash, and the smell of burning flesh. The cries of the wounded echoed through the ruined streets. Tsutomu Yamaguchi stumbled toward his home, barely conscious, his skin raw and blistered from the second blast. His mind whispered one thing, over and over: please, let them be alive. The city he knew was gone. The temples, the hillsides, even the sea, everything was blanketed in grey. But when he reached what was left of his neighborhood, he saw her. His wife, Hisako, clutching their infant son, both alive. She had been out of the house, searching for burn ointment for his injuries when the bomb fell. That small, random act had saved them both. Yamaguchi collapsed in her arms. His skin peeled as she held him, but for the first time since Hiroshima, he wept, not from pain, but from relief. He had witnessed 2 apocalypses, and his family still breathed. The days that followed blurred together. Hospitals overflowed with the dying. The doctors had no medicine, no clean water. The few who survived the blasts now battled infection, fever, and radiation sickness. Hair fell out in clumps. Teeth loosened. Skin darkened, then split. Yamaguchi lay in the darkness, shivering, his body refusing to heal. But slowly, impossibly, he began to recover. His burns scabbed, his fever broke, and within weeks, he could stand again. Around him, Nagasaki became silent. No birds, no laughter, only the sound of wind over ruins. He was one of the few who could walk, and so he began helping others, pulling survivors from rubble, sharing his ration of rice, searching for water among shattered wells. In the following months, the Allied occupation began. American soldiers, stunned by the devastation, moved through the city in gas masks. Yamaguchi avoided them, not out of hatred, but because he didn't know what to say. How could he explain what had happened? How could anyone understand? By the end of 1945, Japan surrendered. The war was over, but the scars were forever. Yamaguchi's body carried reminders, the burns, the radiation wounds, the deep ache in his bones. Yet his mind refused to surrender to despair. He returned to work as an engineer, raising his son in the ruins of a reborn Japan. He built again, because building was the only thing that made sense. But every night, the flashes returned. Every dream ended with the same blinding light. He'd wake up gasping, convinced he'd gone blind. Hisako would hold his trembling hand until he remembered where he was. Years passed. The world moved on. The atomic bomb became a symbol, of victory to some, of warning to others. But to Yamaguchi, it was neither. It was memory. It was pain. In 1957, doctors officially recognized him as a survivor of Hiroshima. Later, they learned he had been in both Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the only known man to endure both atomic bombings. They called him Nij Hibakusha, twice bombed person. Reporters came, asking him to tell his story. At first, he refused. What was there to say? He had seen too much. But as the Cold War deepened, and new weapons appeared, stronger, deadlier, he realized silence was no longer enough. The man who survived 2 atomic blasts decided to speak. And when he did, the world listened. Tsutomu Yamaguchi began to tell his story, not as a survivor seeking sympathy, but as a man carrying a warning. He spoke quietly, his voice steady, never dramatic. "I don't want anyone to ever experience what I saw," he said. His words carried the weight of 2 cities' ghosts. In the years after the war, Japan transformed, factories rebuilt, streets filled with life again. But for Yamaguchi, peace meant something deeper. He had seen what humanity could do when it forgot compassion. And he could not forget the light that erased everything. He began visiting schools, standing before children who had never known war. He would close his eyes, describe the flash, the fire, the people who walked without skin, the rivers that boiled. His voice never trembled. It was not anger he felt, it was sorrow. As the world built new bombs, he watched with dread. The Cuban Missile Crisis, the arms race, the testing in the Pacific. "We are repeating the same mistake," he whispered once to his wife. "We are still children playing with fire." His body grew weaker with age, but he continued to speak. His burns had long healed, but the radiation had left invisible scars, cancers, pain, the slow erosion of his health. Still, when reporters came, he sat up straight, his voice firm. "The only weapon that can save the world," he told them, "is peace." In 2005, at the age of 89, Yamaguchi traveled to New York to address the United Nations. He stood beneath the cold lights of the Assembly Hall, looking out at a sea of diplomats and cameras. He was small, frail, his hands trembling, but when he spoke, the room fell silent. He described Hiroshima, Nagasaki, and what it meant to watch the world end, twice. "I am not angry," he said softly. "I am disappointed. Humanity learned nothing." Afterward, he bowed deeply. The hall erupted in applause, but he didn't smile. Applause did not bring back the dead. It did not erase the fire. It only reminded him how fragile memory could be. Back in Japan, he spent his final years in quiet reflection. His wife passed away before him. His son grew up and had children of his own. Yamaguchi would sit by the window, watching the light change across the hills, remembering the cities that once glowed for all the wrong reasons. He sometimes said the bomb had taken his faith in governments, but not in people. In January 2010, Tsutomu Yamaguchi took his last breath. The newspapers called him the man who survived the impossible. But to those who knew him, he was simply a man who refused to let hatred win. He had seen two suns rise and burn the earth. He had watched humanity destroy itself, and still, he chose forgiveness over rage. At his funeral, one of his friends said, "He lived through hell and came back to teach us how not to go there again." And somewhere, perhaps, in the silence between Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the echoes of his voice still linger, soft, steady, and unbroken. Never again.